Welcome to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling. You are about to discover impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you, so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Be sure you visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now tune in, get ready, and enjoy the journey of emerging as a leader of exception in the 21st century.
Welcome, everyone, to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast. I'm your host, Vicki Noethling, coming to you from Roswell, Georgia. The goal of this podcast is to bring topics and guests that will empower you to become that confident leader and take your business and your life to the next level. Today, I am excited to have with me Belinda Clemmensen. And let me tell you about Belinda. She is a change maker and believes women are not only capable of changing the world, but are also a driving force in making changes. When we look out at the world, we see changes needed, and we can help. The passionate belief is what drives Belinda as her leadership development professional and lets her build the Women's Leadership Intensive. Their mission is to inspire, empower, support, and equip women to lead to change the world for the better. Many women feel we don't fit in the traditional leadership box. Sound familiar, anyone? We know we have more to contribute, but it's not always easy to reach our potential. And as a leader, it is essential to know who you are and lead as you. With over 25 years of experience, Belinda helps leaders step into their potential and connect to a place of purpose where we have our unique strengths and can serve and make organizations and communities better. So today we're going to talk about women, leadership, and saving the world. Please join me in welcoming my guest, Belinda Clemmensen. Belinda, so excited to have you on.
Thank you so much.
I love what you do. Like sisters here, we're so much aligned.
I could tell when you were reading the bio.
Yes, been there, done that, have the t-shirt, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so we always start with a very easy question. Let our guests know, where do you call home? Where do you live?
I live in a very small town called Huntsville, Ontario, Canada, and it's about 2.5, 3 hours drive north of Toronto. And I live surrounded by forest in a very quiet and beautiful place. Very lucky.
Yeah. So I've been to Toronto, but I don't think I ever went 3 hours north and missed out on that. But I do love Canada. There's so many things to do there and just beautiful place.
It is. I'm happy to be here.
What is the difference between equality and equity? And why do we need both of them?
Yeah, this is something that I think more and more people are starting to make this distinction, and rightly so, because, equality in the past has been seen as the goal, right? Like if everybody got the same thing, we'd all be fine. And you can think of this, I like to use a metaphor. You think of this like, if we all need to get from A to B, then we all need some kind of a vehicle to transport us from A to B. So let's give everybody the same thing. Let's give everybody a bicycle, right? And that seems to make sense on the surface. It's like, okay, great. We all have to get from A to B. We all get a bicycle. We should have an equal opportunity to get there. The issue is, how big should that bicycle be? What if some people can't ride a bike? What if some people are afraid to ride a bike? What if some people have had bad experiences riding a bike before? They don't want to get back on a bike. What if people have different physical abilities that might limit them from riding bikes? So whenever we start to apply a one-size-fits-all solution, we run into problems, because underneath all this, we have diversity, right? Which means difference. And so equity is the idea that everyone should have an equal opportunity to thrive in whatever the setting is. And that means different people might need different things based on wherever they're coming from, based on, their intersectional identities, based on their physical abilities, based on their education levels or their home situations, right? So the issue, I mean, with equality, it's not a bad goal, and I think it would definitely be helpful if we could get there. We're not there. We don't all have the same things.
Yeah.
However, it doesn't take into account diversity. When we add that in, it gets much more complex. So neither are easy, but equity is a lot more complex. And I think that's why people have a harder time getting their head around it. If they were to say, okay, I need to create an equitable system, organization, or community, that means you have to be able to wrestle with the complexity that we are all different and we all need different things.
Yeah. I think two things come to mind as you talk about that. One is I remember, and I've been in and out of now corporate for over 45 years. And I remember some of the things that I had asked like my managers to, I'd like to do with my team. And they said, oh, well, that would set precedents. We can't do that because, if we do that for them, we'll have to do it for everyone. And I thought, but no, but as you said, their situation was unique and it would help them and it wouldn't hurt things. It wouldn't hit the bottom line. But there was always that fear, well, everybody's going to want to have it. And so
And
then nobody gets it.
that's right. And then it begs the question, I mean, if everybody really then wants to have it, maybe they should. Like maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe there's a need there that's unmet, right? So it could
Yeah.
uncover an unmet need. And I get it. I mean, corporations have to watch what they spend money on. I understand that. On the other hand, I think these unmet needs, if we leave them alone and try to pretend they're not there, they will bite us somewhere, right? It might not be overt, it might not be the budget for this year, but maybe it's attrition. Maybe it's people leaving to go work somewhere else.
Yeah.
Maybe it's people being disengaged and being less productive, right? If we are not meeting people's needs, then that will become a problem for us somewhere.
Yeah. I remember one of the folks that was describing equity and equality, and they had this fence, and they just had all different sized people looking through the fence, and their vision through looking through that fence was different. And that was to demonstrate that, we all are unique and different, or we have different needs. And, that person that's very short needed a step stool so that they could see things the same way that someone my height is, type of thing.
Yeah.
So it was interesting how the discussion it needs to be given more, I guess, practical kind of examples like the bike, so people will get, oh yeah, I understand that now. Whereas whenever you say just the two words, they look so similar, they sound so similar, you think, well, you're saying the same thing, but you're not.
Absolutely. You're not. And I think, when we look at gender equity in the workplace, for example,
Mhm.
there we can't sort of separate out the reality that women are still doing a lot more domestic, unpaid caregiving work, mental load work outside of the workplace, right? So the idea that we're all coming to work in the same state of being is not usually true. If we look at sort of the general trends of women continuing to do like globally 2/3 more of that
Yeah.
kind of work than their male colleagues and counterparts are, then we could see that your starting point coming into work might be very different. You might be tired. You might get a call from your school or from the
Daycare.
daycare, or if you're looking
Nanny,
after your
whatever.
parents, it
Oh
could be
God,
from the
yes.
care home, it could be from the hospital. All the different roles that we play in our lives do have an impact on how we're able to show up at work. And I think that's part of the equity story.
Yeah. I think that's also why it begs that a great leader is one that builds relationships with their team, with their people, because you can't understand what that person's needs are to be able to give them equity if you don't get to know them. You can't just
That's
come in
right.
your office, shut the door, and expect that you gave them a task to do, they're going to do it, and everything will be fine. When you don't know, I had a person that worked for me that had issues with her son, And she had a lot going on, and she really, in the daytime, had a lot of interruptions that she wasn't performing. But it wasn't that she was a bad employee, that it wasn't that she wasn't capable of doing anything, but she needed to have a different way to be able to accomplish her job. And so we made it easier for her to do that. And it made all the difference in the world.
Yeah. And a lot of times, you know, that flexibility is a great example. I'm not sure what the strategy was in the case that you're describing, but, you know, flexible work has been something that women have wanted for a long time because of these other, you know, responsibilities that we hold, and how challenging it is if we don't have flexible work in order to meet all the demands. But now we're finding that flexible work is actually great for everybody, not just for women, but for all genders, because it's allowing men to participate more fully in parenting roles or household roles or in their community. So it's often the solutions that are helpful in terms of meeting the needs of people who maybe haven't fit that traditional box in the past tend to work for a lot more people than we think on the surface.
Yeah. And it does take more ingenuity, innovation as a leader, as a manager, to be able to manage a mixed workforce, a hybrid workforce. But I think in the end, if you have happy people that aren't exhausted, tired, or frustrated, you'll get more work out of them. It's a win, I think.
Absolutely. And I mean, I usually say to leaders when we're doing leadership training, you know, whatever it is you do, your functional expertise, right? Your technical skill set, maybe you're in finance, maybe you're in operations, whatever it might be. As soon as you take on a leadership role, that now is, I usually say 50% of your job. The other 50% of your job is now people.
Yeah.
And you better get good at that, because people are probably the most challenging part of your leadership job.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, people don't leave jobs, they leave people,
That's right.
managers.
Yeah.
So you say that the road to change exists, but we're not always walking the path that's needed to take to make those changes. You talked about seeing the gender gap played out in the pandemic. And so how do we find that right path that takes us to be able to change? And we're all, of course, everyone's afraid of change.
Yeah.
That's the big thing, but still, to be brave enough to do the change, to walk the path that you need, walk the the road, if you will, take that journey to make things different, is going to be scary. It's going to be hard, but I think in the long run, though, if change is needed, then it's going to be good.
Well, and listen, things are scary and hard now. And
Yeah,
so this
yeah.
is one of my arguments for change, right? Because if we're waiting for the perfect solution to arrive, it's not going to happen. But are we living in a perfect situation right now? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
We've got some big problems that need to be solved socially, globally, right? We've got a lot happening in the world right now that I would say is extremely hard for a lot of people. So the idea that, you know, we should not change because it won't be perfect is not the answer, right?
Yeah,
We should, when
right.
we go into change, and this is, I think, some of the pushback we've been getting recently, pushback against diversity, equity, and inclusion types of initiatives. It's like, oh, that didn't work. Well, it's like, we've really only been at this for a very short time.
Yeah.
Let's keep trying to iterate it and figure out how it will work. Because I do really believe that diversity in leadership is one of the ways that we will be able to solve problems quite differently and find new solutions and new answers versus what we're able to do now. So when we look at actual numbers in leadership, let's take women, because that's easy math, right? We're about 50% of the population. So we can do the 50-50 math. If we take women just as one group, we can see that our numbers are really quite low when it comes to the top decision-making or
Absolutely.
leadership roles in the world, right? Last year, we just hit 10% of the Fortune 500 CEOs being women. Pretty sure we just dropped back below it again the following year right now. So we're under it again. And so, when we look at that, I sort of think like those are people who are making huge influential decisions, not just over their corporations, their employee base, the communities where they operate, their influence on political systems and social systems, the resources they consume, the waste they dispose of. Like this is a huge amount of impact on the world. And 90+% of those decisions are not getting made by women. Right. And that's the easy math. We can look at those same numbers in politics. We can look at those same numbers pretty much anywhere.
Yeah.
And so what I'm saying is it's an experiment that's never been tried. Gender parity in leadership, equality, equal representation has never been tried. And so let's give it a shot, because the evidence and the research right now that is being done on what happens when we do have it in these little pockets around the world is that things get significantly better for everyone. More inclusive decisions get made. It's more productivity and profitability if you're a corporation, right? Gender diverse teams outperform every time they get measured, right? Social improvements like access to healthcare and education go up, greenhouse gas emissions go down, peace agreements last longer. Like there's really no metric that I've seen, and I've been looking for this stuff for years, that says that, diversity is not a good thing.
Yeah. And I think, being a project manager for so many years, you always had an idea of what you wanted in the beginning of that information gathering piece. But it was often rare that what the end result was what you started to be going for. It was just each of those iterations, changes that you made. You failed, you learned, you did it again, you failed, you learned. I mean, it's like a cell phone. The cell phone never lasts more than a year or two, that version of it. It's always being improved. So why wouldn't ideas for diversity, inclusion be the same?
That's right. And I mean, again, like we're concerned that those leaders, won't be qualified or won't be successful. Well, we've got a lot of leaders right now who are not qualified and not successful, right? If failure is the bar, we've already hit the bar in a lot of places. Like,
we're good.
Come on, we're good.
That's awesome. So true. Yes. Give it a go. So I wanted to chat a little bit about, we talked a tiny bit on this, but inequality plays out at home with, most of us at the second shift, because it really is something that for many, many years, it was sort of a sore side of mine. My husband actually was a school teacher, and he took care of the kids all summer long for me. And so he was Mr. Mom. And it was great. It built better relationships with my daughters and it gave him insights as to what my workload was, although it never really was truly there because he wasn't working and doing all these things that he was doing at home. But still, I think that it's something that still needs to be addressed. I think the pandemic really heightened it, because now the moms were 24/7 doing things. And I saw a lot of my colleagues where they gave up things that were for personal improvement, self-care, because they just were overwhelmed teaching, doing their jobs, and being a mother.
The pandemic was the perfect storm to set women back. So multiple factors, right? The fact that we didn't have those systems anymore, daycares and schools.
Yeah.
So those go away. That's how most women are able to work, right? Their kids are in daycare, their kids are in school. So if we don't have that, what do we do? And then we've got this persistent gender pay gap, right? Meaning that in general, not in every household, but in general, men are making more than women. So if somebody has to downshift their career in time like a pandemic, who's going to do it? The person who makes less money. Yeah. So big broad strokes here, that was women. And then we've got this gender-based history and expectations that the caregiving work is done by women. Yeah. And so all of those things kind of came together to create this situation where so many women were hit really hard by the pandemic. Never mind the fact that a lot of the industries that got really decimated by the pandemic were female-dominated industries,
Yeah.
right? So, retail, hospitality, food services, domestic labor, all of those industries
Yeah.
basically hit a halt. So the pandemic, a lot of people will say the pandemic set gender equality back decades, right? At least one full generation,
Yeah.
as a result of that. And I think what it did, the pandemic didn't create these problems. The pandemic showed the holes that are already
Yes.
existing in the system, right? We don't have
Brought
any
light.
safety nets, then of
Yeah.
course, when something happens, people are going to fall through.
Yeah. It did shine a light on all those areas. And I think, the thing is that I don't know that it's being addressed other than people like yourself. Right now, businesses are just trying to get people back to work and figure out the new landscape. And so addressing those other things are not high on their priority. It's just like anything, education, training, all those things go to the wayside whenever profit is necessary. But those are the things that really will make your workforce stronger.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, every time, every sort of social experiment with things like, living wage, right? Universal living
Yes.
wage or universal access to parental leave, any of those sort of social safety nets, what they usually end up showing is that after the initial systems implementation, which is a cost, they basically pay for themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, because your people don't get sick as often, or they don't have to leave work, or a hundred
You don't have
things.
to hire
Yes.
somebody when your person
Yeah.
doesn't come back because they don't have a mat leave or a paternity leave and they can't make it work, right? Like there's all these kinds of things that
Well,
there's a different way of looking at the costs.
and really, if you had that need, that would actually create a whole kind of a subset of a workforce with, I just, as a temporary employee type of thing, but I am covering this person for their workforce. I remember whenever I started working way back in the 80s, one of my friends worked for a larger company, and they had you work 12 weeks or a year, depending on what the thing was, at different jobs so that you could get acquainted with them. But what they were doing was supplementing maternity leave or vacations or a sabbatical for their employees. And it was brilliant because now that person was so diverse in their skill set that they could work anywhere in that company.
Very smart, right?
Yeah.
That's you're thinking, you're planning for the reality of human beings
Yes.
who work and also have lives. That's a
Yeah.
very smart approach,
Yeah.
right? Rather than pretending that people who work for you don't have these lives and are not going to have these needs, right? It just doesn't make sense to ignore that stuff.
Yeah. So yes, you can go on vacation, um, or you could go home to India to see your family for 2 months, and everybody else will do your work, but now they're already overwhelmed with their own work, and it just doesn't create a great working environment.
Yeah.
So how can we step into our power by connecting with what matters most to us? I talked earlier about the fact that women a lot of times forget themselves first. They don't put themselves first. So how can we do that?
I think there's very few women that I talk to that don't deeply care about the state of the world, right? Their values are very much at play in everything they do, whether that's care for their community, their family, for other people at their workplace, so their values for justice, their values for equality. I mean, this comes through again and again and again when I'm working with women leaders. And I think this is the place to really connect to in terms of stepping into our power, because it is deeply motivating to know what you care about, right? And
Yeah.
if you care about something enough, you will fight for it. And I think that's the place that we all really need to start paying more attention to and spend some time investigating in ourselves and with our peers is, what do we want to fight for? What really matters for us? You know, is it democracy? Is it equality? Is it peace? Is it, you know, you name it. And I think when we tap into those deeper value systems, that's where we hit that motivator. Um, it's kind of like, you know, women are often called like the mama bear, right? When they're protecting their families. That's what I'm talking about. It's like you're connecting into a value here, and just try and cross this line, right? It's not going to
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the place I think we need to get to in terms of how we want to protect not only our families, but also our
The world.
communities, our countries, the world, right? Because once we get uh once we get ready to fight for something that matters, watch out.
Yeah. So you talked about sponsorship, and I'm big on, as I'm coaching folks, to talk about things that they need from coaching perspective and mentoring. But talk to us about why we need sponsorship.
Yes. I think we need all three. I think all three are amazing. Sponsorship's unique in that it is about actively opening doors for someone and creating opportunities for someone. It's like, you know, in the old days, we used to say it's like you open up your Rolodex for somebody, right? Like you make the introduction, you speak that person's name when they're not in the room, you put their name forward for the promotion, you talk about the great work that they're doing, you know, send them the job posting, all the things that we can do to really get someone where they want to go. So it's really about like, where does this person trying to get to, and what kind of actual practical support can I offer to help them get there? Because that is the thing that a lot of women and other equity deserving groups have not had,
Yeah.
right? A lot of us have we've struggled for every inch. And I'm not saying that I'm opposed to hard work. I actually probably am a bit of an overworker myself. However, let's make the road easier for whomever we can, right? By opening those doors.
That's exactly why I started my podcast. I thought, well, I don't want the next generation to have to go through all the things that I had to do. And
That's
they'll
it.
have different things, you know, but it's just, okay, what can I give you in your toolbox to be able to attack whatever comes your way? And as you said, opening doors just as an introduction, it is a great way to do that.
Yeah.
And so for me, the podcast is, I'm introducing you to maybe somebody that could help you, and maybe in a way that you didn't even know that you needed that help.
That's exactly it. And I mean, I think that's why I wrote the book too, right? Because I
Yeah,
just thought I
yeah.
will be darned if I don't try to make things better for the next generations coming up.
Yeah,
Who knows what kind of impact it's all going to have, but at least we're here trying.
that's exactly right. So the last question I have is, what is next for you? You wrote this book. What's next now?
That is a great question. I don't fully know, to be honest.
It's exciting.
It is exciting. There's probably another book because I've already changed my mind about a lot of things. And also there's new data, and I want to keep things current. So there's probably a part 2 in there somewhere, or an update or something. And then, you know, we've been running our women's leadership programs here we're on our 6th year now. It's a year-long intensive program. And so the book is sort of like trying to reach a broad audience and helping give everybody the information, the research, the critical thinking pieces, right, that they can use in their lives. The intensive program is the deep dive. And so it's a smaller number of women, and we work with them over the course of a full year. And that's where we really see big change,
Impact. Yeah.
big impact. So between those two things, I feel like I've got both sides of the equation for me in terms of the kind of work that feels fulfilling. But at the end of the day, what's really going to make it feel worth it to me is if I see the numbers move. And
Yeah.
I'm not seeing it yet. Maybe I need a longer view. I don't know, but like that's really the end goal for me. I want to see those numbers move. because
Yeah.
they're indicative of change, the kind of change that I think we need.
And I think, the lens has to be pretty wide, because you're not going to see a big brushstroke of a change. It is going to be those small things that over time you'll see that big brushstroke, but it just takes time, and people can't give up.
That's
You
right.
know, I used to work for UPS, and when we started international, it was losing money all the time, and I got there, and to me, I thought, this is the best thing. This is a wonderful thing for us to do. Well, you don't know yet, and it's terrible and all this, but I said, it's got to make a difference. And then all of a sudden, 20 years, 15 years later, was the thing that helped us survive some of the hard times here. So you just can't give up. You just have to have.
Yeah, that's it exactly. And I think, it's easy to get discouraged about the state of the world and about the state of gender equality and equity. But there is change happening. And I think we need to hold on to those sort of moments of hope and victory when we find them. And I think we also, somebody sent me a clip the other day of Michelle Obama basically saying, like, we can't afford not to have each other's backs as women. And to me, that's one of the keys. Like, I think most women are doing a really good job of being allies to one another, but we could do that even more.
Yeah, absolutely. And change a few men's minds too.
Absolutely.
That's why I teach leading with the heart, the head, and the hands, because you've got to just start to lead with your heart. That will make change. Well, it's been wonderful. And if you all out there have enjoyed this conversation and really want to dive deeper with Belinda, I'm going to share my slide, as I always do, that has the contact information. If you're just listening and you haven't taken notes, I always remind you should have had a paper and pencil in the beginning, but if you didn't, run quick. The website is womensleadershipintensive.ca. That's womensleadershipintensive.ca. On Facebook, same thing, Women's Leadership Intensive. And LinkedIn, you can find her with her name, Belinda Clemmensen. Clemmensen has 2 M's, just as your warning, lots of E's. I'm going to turn it over to Belinda to talk to you about the things that she'd like for you to visit on her website that might help you, and also what you might want to check out on her social media platforms. So, Belinda.
Thanks, Vicki. So on the website, I would say there's probably 2 places for most people to look. One is there's a book page. So you're welcome to go there to find the direct links to buy the book. It's a great starting point, kind of gives you the breadth of information. A lot of people will say that book armed them with the language that they needed to have the conversations about what they were experiencing. So that's great. There's also a programs page on there. And one of the programs we have is a free video series. And so that drops a video into your inbox once a week. And those videos are about, they're called Inspired to Lead, Tips to Lead Like It Matters. Because we really, again, going back to this thing about leading as you, it actually does matter. And so just starting to think about yourself differently as a leader, even if that's not your job title.
Yeah. Well, Belinda, we definitely will have to have some future conversations. I enjoyed chatting with you so much. And as I said, I think it's just really important that we women do kind of cling together to really change the world. I truly believe we will be the ones that save the world.
I agree. Thank you so much for having me, Vicki. I've really enjoyed the conversation.
So as always, I remind everyone that life is a journey, and it's up to you to enjoy the ride. This is Vicki Noethling, signing off.
Thank you for tuning into the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling, where we share impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Remember to visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast.